One step at a time. Cut the noise. Keep control.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something really crucial, the path to genuine financial independence.
That's right.
And we're not just talking theory here. We're digging into source material that's essentially a step-by-step guide, a manual almost.
Exactly. A manual for building wealth. And interestingly, it's framed by some pretty old philosophical ideas. Stoicism, actually.
Stoicism, okay. Discipline, control, I can see the link.
Absolutely. The whole idea is that mastering your internal self, your discipline, is, well, step one for mastering your finances.
And there's a specific goal attached, which I find fascinating. The sources actually quantify the reward for this discipline.
They do. They lay out 6 core principles and following them consistently. Well, the promise is a repeatable path to potentially $1.2 million.
$1.2 million. Okay, so our mission today is to pull out every actionable piece of advice, every specific nugget to help you shift your spending.
Right, from that kind of unconscious leakage,
Yeah,
where money just disappears.
the silent killer.
Yeah, that's it. Shifting from that to intentional mastery, we need to understand the principles, the cuts needed, and how the math actually adds up.
And the core idea right off the bat seems to be that it's not really about earning more money for most people.
That's a key insight from the sources. The biggest hurdle usually isn't income. It's waste. It's eliminating that financial leakage.
So the discipline you need to manage, say, $5,000 effectively.
Is exactly the same discipline you need to manage $1 million. If you can plug the leaks, building wealth becomes less about hoping and more about, well, math. A system.
A system, not speculation. I like that. Okay, let's unpack this blueprint. Where do we start? What's the absolute foundation?
Principle 1. Everything else rests on this.
Okay, principle 1. It sounds simple, maybe even obvious, tracking every penny you spend.
Deceptively simple, yeah.
Hmm.
But the source material is emphatic. It's non-negotiable. It's the bedrock. You really can't skip this and expect the rest to work.
It makes sense. The core idea being you can't manage what you don't measure.
Precisely. It's that old Stoic idea of self-examination applied to your wallet. Tracking turns spending from this sort of unconscious habit.
Like breathing almost.
Right, into an intentional act. If you don't know exactly where every dollar went last month, you're fundamentally not in control. You're flying blind.
And most people, let's be honest, are kind of flying blind. They see the total go down, but they couldn't tell you exactly how much went to groceries versus, random coffees or online shopping.
Exactly. The author demands this almost brutal level of specificity, line by line,
Why is that so critical?
because of what we mentioned earlier, leakage. Modern life makes leakage incredibly easy. Think about subscriptions.
Oh yeah, the free trial trap.
We've all been there. You sign up, mean to cancel, life happens, and suddenly you're paying for 3 different streaming services you barely watch.
The sources mention a specific story, right?
Yeah.
About a friend.
Yeah, a friend who had no idea she was spending over $100 a month just on various streaming and app subscriptions she'd forgotten about.
Wow. $100 a month.
That's $1,200 a year, vanishing. And because it's small amounts, automatically drafted, it just flies under the radar.
And it's not just subscriptions, is it? Things like those buy now, pay later services or just tapping your card everywhere. It makes spending frictionless.
Which is great for convenience, terrible for awareness. Easier to spend means harder to track intentionally. It's almost like we're paying an inertia tax.
An inertia tax, I like that. Okay, so if leakage is the enemy and tracking is the weapon, how does the listener practically start, beyond just looking at the bank balance?
The source insists on a formal audit, like really digging in. You need to pull at least 2 months of statements, credit cards, bank accounts, everything.
2 full months, okay.
And use a template, a spreadsheet, an app, whatever works. But the key isn't just recording the spending. It's justifying it.
Justifying every single purchase.
Yes, that's the first core teaching. Know thy spending. You look at that $5 coffee, that $20 lunch, that subscription, and ask, does this align with my long-term goal of financial freedom? If not, it's potential waste.
I can imagine that being, well, a bit painful for some people, seeing it all laid out like that, especially the small stuff that adds up.
It can be painful, absolutely, but it's necessary pain. It's like turning the lights on in a dark room. It's the start of awareness, the start of control.
And without this step, trying to apply the other principles like cutting entertainment or paying debt, it's just guesswork, isn't it?
Exactly. You're shooting in the dark. This first step, the detailed tracking, it creates the map. It shows you exactly where the money's going, so you know where to make the cuts.
Right. It's the diagnosis before the treatment. So once we have this map, we can start targeting specific leaks, which brings us to things people often pay for out of sheer habit. Okay, moving from general awareness to a really specific target. Principle 3 is about stopping the overpaying for phone plans.
Yes, and this hits that inertia tax concept perfectly. It tackles convenience versus actual necessity.
The argument is that major carriers charge way more than they need to.
3 to 4 times more, according to the source. Mostly for things people don't fully use, especially massive data allowances.
Ah, data. The big one. We sign up for, like, unlimited data just in case.
Right, fear of running out.
Yeah.
But if you actually track your usage, which ties back to Principle 1, awareness, you often find you're on Wi-Fi most of the time anyway. Home, work, coffee shops.
So you're paying a huge premium for peace of mind you rarely need.
Exactly. And technically, many cheaper plans, these MVNOs.
Mobile virtual network operators.
They actually use the exact same physical cell towers as the big guys. Same network, same signal quality.
So what are you paying the big carriers for then?
Often it's brand recognition, fancy retail stores, huge marketing budgets, things that don't improve your actual service, just the overhead.
The convenience premium and the inertia tax, because switching feels like a hassle.
Precisely. The sources estimate switching takes maybe 15 minutes. 15 minutes. To potentially save hundreds, even $1,000 every single year.
Okay, $1,000 a year for 15 minutes work sounds amazing. But let's be real, sometimes switching is a nightmare. Customer service hell, porting numbers, unexpected fees. People avoid it for a reason.
That's a fair challenge, and this is where the Stoic mindset comes back in. It's not about pretending the hassle doesn't exist. It's about reframing it.
How so?
You consciously choose to endure that short-term friction, the 15 minutes, maybe an hour, of annoyance for the significant recurring long-term gain. The fear of hassle is often worse than the hassle itself.
So putting up with the annoying phone call is actually an act of financial discipline.
Yes. If you're paying an extra $100 a month just to avoid that call, you're actively choosing unnecessary expense over a brief necessary effort. You're violating the principle of living below your means.
And that $100 save, that $1,200 a year,
Can go straight towards high-interest debt or into investments. It's about intentional resource allocation, getting efficient. And that same intentionality needs to apply to our daily habits, too.
Right. Let's talk behavior. Principle 2 hits hard. Cutting back on amusement. The source quotes an average spend of $2,500 a year on entertainment for Americans.
It's a huge number. And the argument is that a lot of this spending is, well, discretionary and often provides only fleeting enjoyment. It's driven by this cultural idea that happiness has to be bought.
Movies, concerts, fancy hobbies, streaming bundles.
Exactly. Outsourced fun.
But hold on, isn't leisure important? Cutting back $2,500 worth of enjoyment sounds pretty miserable. Is that sustainable? Don't we need fun?
This is where it gets philosophical again. The author brings up two Greek concepts, hedonia and eudaimonia.
Okay.
Hedonia is that purchased pleasure. The concert high, the buzz from shopping, it's temporary, needs constant refueling with cash.
And eudaimonia.
That's more like genuine flourishing, well-being. It comes from within. Self-sufficiency, learning, creating.
So the goal isn't no fun, it's finding joy that doesn't require constant spending.
Precisely. The core teaching here is detach from luxury. Seek joy in things that are intrinsically rewarding, not just expensive distractions. If your happiness depends on buying things, you're always financially vulnerable.
So instead of the $50 dinner and movie,
The author suggests things like reading books from the library, learning skills on YouTube, going hiking, working on a creative project, things that enrich you but cost little or nothing.
free or low-cost alternatives, making your own coffee before the hike instead of buying one.
Right. Maximize the fulfillment you get per dollar spent. It's a shift from being just a consumer of entertainment to maybe a creator, or at least someone finding joy in simpler, more self-reliant ways.
That discipline definitely connects to the next big behavioral area. Principle 6, mastering food costs.
Food. This is often the sneakiest budget killer. Why? Because we spend on it constantly in small amounts.
The death by 1,000 cuts. Or lattes.
Exactly. The $8 lunch here, the $5 coffee there, the $40 takeout because you're tired. It adds up incredibly fast, but each individual purchase feels minor.
There's that anecdote again, the college friend.
Right, the friend who somehow spent $6,000 extra in a year, mostly on restaurants and cafes, without even realizing where it went.
$6,000. That's huge. That's real money that could be invested or used for debt.
And it vanished purely due to convenience and lack of tracking. Back to principle 1 again.
So what's the alternative? The author's approach sounds pretty extreme.
It is extreme. The source details spending only $2,000 a year on food compared to an average of maybe $8,000. That's a $6,000 annual saving right there.
How is $2,000 even possible? That's like $166 a month.
The method is strict. Zero eating out.
Yeah.
Rigorous meal prepping every week. Buying groceries in bulk. Always on sale. It requires a significant investment of time and planning.
Okay, so maybe hitting $2,000 isn't realistic for everyone, especially families or people with demanding jobs.
Probably not. But the author uses the extreme to highlight the potential gap. The $6,000 difference between average and maximum frugality forces you to question your own convenience spending.
The real target is eliminating the spontaneous, unplanned food costs. The takeout, the daily cafe visits.
Absolutely. And meal prepping is key here. It tackles decision fatigue, end of a long day, willpower's low, ordering pizza is easy.
But if the healthy, cheap meal is already prepped in the fridge,
You remove the decision. You pre-commit it on Sunday. Saves time, saves mental energy, saves money.
it really connects back to that Stoic idea. Discipline and appetite leads to mastery in life, control your impulse for that expensive meal, and you strengthen your overall self-control.
You got it. Rule your plate, rule your finances. Okay, so we've handled the behavioral leaks, phone, fun, food. Now for the big structural ones.
Right. Principle 4. This feels like the most urgent one. Aggressively paying off debt. The source calls high-interest debt, especially credit cards, financial bondage.
It's not just psychological bondage, it's mathematical bondage.
Yeah.
High-interest debt actively works against you. It undoes all your other saving efforts. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a massive hole in it.
And the numbers are terrifying. We're talking credit card rates of 18%, 20%, even up to 27% or higher sometimes.
Astronomical. And the source gives this absolutely chilling calculation, a $10,000 debt. Just $10,000. If you only make minimum payments, compounding interest can turn that into, get this, $111,000 over 10 years.
Whoa, $111,000 from a $10,000 debt? That's insane.
It should be a massive wake-up call. That debt is multiplying faster than you can possibly earn a return elsewhere. It makes living below your means impossible because the debt itself is growing uncontrollably.
But the flip side is the power of paying it down. The source says paying off high-interest debt is a guaranteed return on investment.
Absolutely guaranteed. If your card charges 22%, every single dollar you put towards that principal instantly earns you 22% tax-free. You just can't beat that return safely in the stock market. It's not sexy, but it's incredibly powerful.
So how do you attack it? What's the strategy?
Well, there are two main schools of thought, both kind of implicitly supported. First, the debt avalanche.
That's hitting the highest interest rate first, right?
Exactly. Purely mathematical. Attack the most expensive debt first to save the most money on interest overall. Maximize that guaranteed ROI.
Makes sense mathematically. But what about the psychological side? Sometimes you need a win.
And that's where the second method, the debt snowball, comes in. You pay off the smallest debt balance first, regardless of the interest rate.
So you get that quick victory, pay off a whole card or loan.
Right. It builds momentum. Psychologically, it can be really motivating to see debts disappearing completely. It fuels the consistency that the Stoic approach demands, that feeling of reclaiming independence.
And that ties straight back to the philosophy. Freedom cannot coexist with debt. To owe is to serve. Getting rid of that debt is step one to freedom.
It has to be priority one if you have high-interest debt. Everything else waits. Okay, once debt is under control, there's the other big monster. Transportation. Principle 5.
Ah, yes, the car. Often the second or third biggest expense, but people just accept it. The source says the average cost is over $8,000 a year.
And that $8,000 isn't just the car payment. That's the sneaky part.
Right. It's insurance.
Yes, maintenance, repairs, registration fees, and the big one people forget, depreciation. Your car loses value every single day.
Especially new cars, thousands lost just driving off the lot.
Exactly. Now, the author's solution is, again, extreme. Don't own a car at all. Bike, walk, use ride-sharing occasionally. That saves the entire $8,000 plus.
But like the food budget, that's just not realistic for a lot of people. Suburbs, kids, commutes.
Totally acknowledged. So the principle isn't necessarily no car. It's about minimizing the financial drain of the car you do have. It's a spectrum.
So what are the practical steps for people who need a car?
It's about efficiency. Carpooling, if possible. using public transport sometimes, even just part way, combining errands into fewer trips to save gas and wear and tear,
And the car itself.
making a rational choice. Do you need that brand new SUV that screams status but costs a fortune? Or does a reliable, older, fuel-efficient sedan do the actual job getting you from A to B just as well for a fraction of the cost?
Trading down the status symbol for functionality.
It's about reducing excess, simplicity, efficiency. That $8,000 plus tied up in a depreciating asset every year. That's capital that could be working towards that $1.2 million instead. It's an intentional allocation of resources.
Okay. So we've got awareness, we've cut the behavioral waste in fun and food, and we've tackled the giants of debt and transport. What happens when you put it all together? So let's synthesize. We've covered the 6 principles: tracking everything, cutting the phone bill, rethinking amusement, mastering food costs, killing debt, and driving smarter or less. It's a full financial life overhaul.
It really is. It's a shift towards austerity, but framed positively. The Stoic view isn't about suffering. It's about gaining freedom. Freedom from debt. Freedom from the need to constantly earn more just to pay for lifestyle inflation.
And the numbers start to add up powerfully. The sources estimate that implementing these principles rigorously could free up, for the average person, around $500 per month.
$500. That's $6,000 a year. Remember the friend losing $6,000 on food? It shows it's achievable.
And freeing up $500 a month changes everything. It's
Yeah.
breathing room. It's the difference between panic when the boiler breaks and just dealing with it.
Exactly. It moves you from financial fragility to having options. But the real magic happens when that $500 isn't just extra money.
Right. It has to be invested. That's where the $1.2 million comes from.
Yes, the power of compounding. You take that $500 saved every single month, invest it consistently, let's say, in a simple index fund, tracking the market, and assume a conservative 7% average annual return.
Which is roughly the historical stock market average adjusted for inflation.
Right. Do that consistently over a typical working life, say 40 years, and that steady $500 a month grows into $1.2 million.
Well, just from $500 a month.
It's all about time and consistency. In the early years, your contributions are the main driver. But after 20, 25 years, the growth on your growth, the compounding, starts doing the really heavy lifting. The interest earned starts dwarfing your actual $500 monthly input.
So it's not about getting lucky or timing the market. It's about plugging the leaks to find that $500 and then just letting time work.
Time and discipline. That $1.2 million isn't a lottery win. It's the predictable result of consistent, disciplined action.
It reframes every small spending decision, doesn't it? Skipping that expensive lunch isn't just saving $20 today, it's contributing a tiny piece to that future $1.2 million.
Exactly. And this whole strategy really boils down to those 5 core teachings we've touched on.
Let's recap them.
Okay. 1, know thy spending. Awareness first. 2, detach from luxury. Find internal fulfillment. 3, avoid financial slavery. Kill high-interest debt. 4, live below your means. Create that surplus.
Which requires a real shift in identity, not just habits. You have to become the kind of person who meal preps and budgets rigorously.
Which brings us to the final critical point, the author's challenge. After laying all this out,
Knowledge isn't enough.
precisely, knowledge means nothing without action. It's easy to nod along and agree this all makes sense. It's hard to actually do it.
To make that phone call, to spend Sunday cooking, to say no to the impulse purchase. That's the real test.
That's the 5th and final core teaching. Act today. Knowledge you don't use is worthless. The sources are clear. Wealth isn't for the smartest person or the highest earner necessarily. It's for the most consistent person.
The person who finds the $500 leak, plugs it, invests it, and just keeps doing it, month after month, year after year.
That's the path. Discipline and consistency. It's demanding, but the math is clear and the potential reward is immense. Hashtag tag outro.
Well, that was certainly a deep dive from Stoic philosophy to the brutal math of compounding debt and the power of consistent saving.
Yeah, some of those figures really stick with you.
Definitely. That $10,000 debt becoming $111,000, horrifying. Or losing $6,000 a year on casual food spending. But also the hopeful part. That $500 a month consistently invested turning into $1.2 million.
It really hammers home the idea that your biggest financial gains often come from controlling your own behavior, managing the outflow. It's usually easier to save $500 than to suddenly earn an extra $1,000 after tax.
So, for everyone listening, the challenge is to take this knowledge and turn it into action. Maybe start small. Identify just one thing from today's discussion.
The lowest hanging fruit, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe that 15-minute phone plan switch for a quick win, or maybe the most painful area, really doing that 2-month spending audit to finally see where the money's going. Just pick one thing and start.
Start today. And maybe here's a final thought to wrestle with as you decide where to start. We talked about debt being the enemy of freedom and paying it off, giving a guaranteed ROI.
Right.
So think about your own situation. Which cut would provide the biggest immediate psychological boost for you? Would eliminating that nagging high-interest credit card debt feel like a bigger win, a bigger step towards freedom? Or would reclaiming that $2,500 amusement budget and redirecting it feel more empowering right now?
Interesting question. Which win fuels more long-term consistency?
Exactly. What sparks the momentum you need to stay disciplined for the long haul towards that potential $1.2 million?
Something to definitely consider. Find your fuel. Okay, that's all for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Take action.
Until next time.
Welcome to the debate. Today, our focus is on a pretty prescriptive financial philosophy we found in the source material. It's an aggressive, six-pronged strategy that's all about achieving financial freedom through, well, extreme consumption reduction. This approach, it mandates some really comprehensive behavioral changes, everything from eliminating debt to avoiding car ownership. And it mathematically promises some significant long-term wealth, projecting about $1.2 million in savings over 40 years just by consistently banking $500 a month.
It's a very compelling promise for sure. I mean, it's backed by the undeniable power of compound interest, but the methodology itself, it raises some immediate questions for me about practicality and, frankly, necessity.
Absolutely. And that brings us right to our central question for today. Is this rigorously disciplined consumption-focused philosophy one that's defined by eliminating waste, cutting amusement, and achieving a kind of hyper-awareness? Is it the most effective and, critically, the necessary path to sustainable financial independence? I'm going to argue that yes, this disciplined, detail-oriented approach is basically non-negotiable. Awareness has to precede control, and it's the aggregation of these small, consistent cuts that guarantees the long-term success.
And I'm going to take the opposing view. While the math, the outcome is guaranteed if the savings are maintained, I really challenge whether this specific level of restrictive discipline is truly optimal or even sustainable for most people. I'd contend that this demanding level of asceticism, it risks misallocating energy away from much higher leverage financial actions like, say, increasing your income, or, maybe more importantly, compromising your quality of life way beyond what's actually required to hit those goals.
Well, the foundation of my position rests entirely on behavioral change, and that begins with awareness. The philosophy is explicit here. You cannot master what you do not measure, so tracking every expense becomes essential. This isn't just about finding leaks, it's about transforming spending from this unconscious, reactive habit into an intentional, deliberate act. The examples in the material, like the friend who failed to track and he allowed forgotten subscriptions and these impulsive, minor purchases to leak over $100 a month, they show that money just vanishes through inattention. The entire $1.2 million structure depends on implementing all 6 principles, which is what aggregates to that required $500 a month savings target. If you skip tracking or you ignore the small cuts, you just never gain the psychological consistency you need for the major moves. And of course, we have to address the primary lever, high-interest debt. Paying off credit cards that are carrying 18 to 27% interest rates offers a guaranteed, powerful return on investment that, it far exceeds any realistic market average. The freedom the material is seeking requires this severe debt-eliminating discipline as the foundational step. You have to do that before any true investment success can be achieved.
Okay, I fully 100% concur on the undeniable financial power of debt repayment. It is the best guaranteed return available, bar none. But that strong foundation doesn't automatically validate the extreme structure that's built on top of it.
My concern is that the level of restriction being mandated risks making this whole pursuit of wealth impractical and, honestly, probably unsustainable. I mean, the strategy doesn't just ask people to cut waste. It asks them to eliminate entire categories of normal expenditure. We're talking about eliminating the average $2,500 per year spent on entertainment and strongly encouraging car non-ownership, which would save on the average $8,000 yearly transportation cost. So my main argument here is that this intense focus on micro-optimization, like spending 15 minutes switching a phone plan to save hundreds per year, it distracts from the vast, obvious structural leaks. Why demand a comprehensive daily spreadsheet for every coffee, when the source material itself highlights these crippling $6,000 annual losses from high-cost restaurant habits alone? We should be prioritizing sealing the two massive macro leaks, high-interest debt and major food waste.
I understand your focus on high leverage points, but I think you're misunderstanding the behavioral necessity of the microcuts. The philosophy is about establishing mastery. If you permit exceptions, if you decide that small, frequent purchases like a daily coffee or cheap takeout are exempt from scrutiny, you are creating a psychological loophole that completely undermines the entire system of intentionality. This comprehensive tracking, it's like an anti-sludge mechanism. It increases the friction of mindless consumption. The leakage of money through these small, frequent bursts is precisely what demonstrates a lack of overall discipline. To achieve $1.2 million requires 40 years of consistent action. That level of consistency, it just can't be built on partial adherence.
I agree that visibility is crucial for intentionality, I do, but let's talk about marginal utility for a second. For someone who is struggling with massive structural leaks, $6,000 in restaurant bills or 20% credit card debt, the utility of spending 10 minutes logging a $4 coffee it's minimal compared to the time and energy you could spend restructuring a mortgage or negotiating down a massive insurance premium. For most people who are financially stressed, the psychological burden of tracking every single penny just leads to burnout. We should encourage awareness by tracking the major categories quarterly and analyzing the biggest transactions, not by demanding this monastic discipline of daily granular accounting. If that intensity causes a person to abandon the whole system after 2 years, the philosophy has failed them entirely, regardless of its mathematical elegance.
Burnout is often just a symptom of insufficient commitment. Consistency is the true virtue here. And let's get back to leverage, because we have to ground this in the guaranteed return. We both agree that aggressive debt repayment is the foundational priority. It is a guaranteed return that embodies the principle that financial freedom cannot coexist with servitude to creditors. This is the non-glamorous, foundational priority that clears the ground for compounding.
Yes, I absolutely stand by the power of debt repayment, but here's the critical pivot. Once the debt is eliminated, the remaining 5 principles in this strategy are all focused on severe consumption cuts: amusement, food, phone, transport, and that granular tracking. If a person is already debt-free, the strategy demands a really deep reduction in both discretionary and essential spending. For instance, the demand to spend only $2,000 a year on food versus the national average of $8,000. For someone making a good income and who's already out of debt, does this extreme, across-the-board focus on consumption remain a sensible financial optimization strategy, or does it sort of transition into an exercise in pure asceticism, a lifestyle choice that's dictated more by ideology rather than the actual need to hit a $500 monthly target?
I'm not convinced that these cuts are separable from the achievement of, life mastery itself. I think the philosophy views these financial cuts as necessary forms of behavioral discipline. The goal isn't just to save money, it's to eliminate excess movement and detachment from luxury. Defending the cuts, that drastic reduction in food cost, it forces you to develop competency in meal prep and eliminate high-cost, low-value food convenience. That's a skill transfer. Similarly, drastically reducing transportation costs, saving over $8,000 a year by cycling or walking or avoiding car ownership, and then seeking joy in self-sufficiency. These are key components of consistent savings behavior. These reductions fundamentally rewire your relationship with instant gratification.
That rewiring effect is clear, I'll grant you that, but we have to discuss opportunity cost. When the goal is just to hit $500 in savings, these mandated structural changes can actually become counterproductive. I mean, consider the car. Eliminating car ownership saves $8,000, yes, but if that forces a working parent to add 2 hours to their daily commute using public transport or restricts their ability to accept a higher-paying job just outside the city's center, the time cost far outweighs the financial saving. We're asking people to compromise their career potential, which is the highest leverage financial activity available to them, in the name of saving on transport. And similarly, mandating the complete elimination of the average $2,500 annual entertainment budget, that demands a profound alteration of social choices and family well-being. Are these mandates truly essential to hitting that $500 target? Or do they just enforce a niche lifestyle that makes financial independence feel like an undue burden? A person can eliminate high-interest debt and the $6,000 food waste and probably achieve the target without ever giving up their car or their social life.
But if they only cut the big stuff, they lose the psychological benefit of rigorous self-control in every domain. And that's what prevents falling back into old habits. This philosophy recognizes that human behavior is the bottleneck, and the 6 principles are there to reinforce the required consistency across all domains of life. If you maintain expensive habits in one area, that indiscipline, it tends to seep into others.
That's a compelling point about behavioral reinforcement. But energy is a finite resource. For someone seeking to build wealth, where is the optimal allocation of that energy? Is the time spent micro-tracking every penny or meticulously reducing a phone plan a better use of limited cognitive capacity than, say, an hour spent learning a high-demand software skill that could lead to a $10,000 salary increase? I worry this hyper-focus on consumption reduction, particularly once the major debt and food leaks are sealed, it just becomes a distraction, an act of ideology rather than optimized financial planning geared toward maximum net worth creation.
Knowledge means nothing without action. The material posits that wealth belongs not to the cleverest, but to the most consistent. And that consistency is built on small, repeatable acts of discipline across every single category. The financial cuts are the gymnasium for the mind.
And consistency is also built on sustainability and practicality. If the system is so rigorous demanding a life of a near hermit that the average person quits after 18 months because they simply cannot bear never eating out or walking 10 miles in the snow, then the philosophy has failed them entirely, regardless of its mathematical purity. We have to factor in the human element and the necessary costs of sustaining relationships and career growth.
Well, I think we've clearly outlined the fundamental tension in this philosophy. I'd maintain that the cumulative power of awareness, consistency, and rigorous discipline across all 6 domains, especially that aggressive debt payoff, is the only reliable way to fundamentally transform spending from an unconscious habit to an intentional action and thereby secure the $1.2 million outcome. You have to address the micro leaks to build the discipline for the macro cuts.
And I would reiterate that while discipline and awareness are, of course, critical, the sheer magnitude of the savings goal relies overwhelmingly on eliminating high-interest debt and addressing that massive structural food waste. While the cuts to transportation and entertainment are mathematically sound, we have to question the practical necessity and sustainability of eliminating these categories entirely versus just focusing our finite effort on high-leverage activities, like increased earning potential and sealing only the most destructive leaks.
It is a powerful framework, no doubt, that challenges comfortable norms and demands a high level of self-control.
Indeed, the material provides a strong blueprint, but it really leaves the individual to weigh the required depth of discipline against an optimized, sustainable effort. Thank you for illuminating the complex relationship between an aggressive financial strategy and adherence to a restrictive lifestyle.